Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Pause for Pedagogy, a conversation with Ramiro Delarosa discussing gamification as leadership pedagogy with the International Leadership Association. My name is Lisa Endersby, and I am an educational developer with the Teaching Commons at York University and co-editor of Pause for Pedagogy. The ILA and I are thrilled to welcome Ramiro to our latest conversation in the Pause for Pedagogy series. So welcome, Ramiro. I'd love if you could begin our conversation today by sharing a little bit about yourself.
Yes, thank you, Lisa, and thanks for having me on this wonderful, kind of cool morning as we go through this topic. My name is Delarosa, as Lisa was saying, and my article on gamification as leadership pedagogy is posted on the website, and I am the associate director for the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley. And I work, well, my official title is Associate Director for Innovation and Research at the University at the Center for Online Learning, Teaching Technology. And I've got a PhD in Leadership Studies and a Master's in Education and Instructional Design and a Bachelor's of Business Administration. So go ahead, Lisa. Did you have we can move on to the questions.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah. So my first question is a broad question. I always ask about where the ideas for these articles come from. So what key question or questions were you hoping to answer in writing this article?
Right. What I was trying to do is talk about more of a pedagogy or in gamification and not technology. And just to clear, I guess some of the viewers don't know exactly what gamification is, but gamification is just a way of taking those gaming elements, those elements that when you play a game, whether it's technology or just a basic board game, or any kind of game that engages you, that motivates you to keep playing, taking those elements and inserting them or bringing them over into a non-gaming boring education. I'm tired of reading. Yeah, just to bring the students in and say, oh man, I want to take that class because it's great and it's fun and it doesn't have to be technology that we look at to make that happen. Just like it doesn't have to be technology to be a board game or to be a game that kids play outside. Has nothing to do with technology. And that's where I was going with this. It was like, and it took me many years going through this and reading about technology and writing a couple of papers on it and just like, there's got to be more than this. We don't have to go searching for these fancy leaderboards and which I don't even use at all. But things like animation and characters talking to you and spending all this money, we don't have to do that. And that was a question that I want to talk about in the paper and in this interview.
Great, thank you. And I appreciate, speaking as an educational developer who works with a lot of instructors across various disciplines and topics and classes, this idea of equating gamification with technology and not necessarily having to do so, I think is a really valuable point for a lot of our listeners, not just in leadership, but across different pedagogies, that the principles and practices of making learning engaging and interactive for our students, while technology supports that, I appreciate that you're thinking pedagogy first, not necessarily technology first. That's a really valuable point to share.
Right, and I didn't get there just right away, as I mentioned.
Yeah.
It took me a long time, and I spent quite a bit of hours searching for leaderboards and trying to implement them into Blackboard. And shamelessly, I did for one semester, or at least half a semester, and then I dropped it, and it was awful. It was really bad. Oh. It didn't add anything to the course. It didn't add to my teaching. It didn't add to the students' learning, except maybe one person in there was like, well, I'd like to kind of know where I'm at. But yeah, but there's other ways to do that. And if you read the article, you'll see where.
Which is a great segue, because you do speak to something more specific about the practice or pedagogy that you discuss in the article. So let's talk a little bit about that maybe more specific experience or the practice and pedagogy that you're discussing. Where did the idea or the need of this particular work come from?
Well, it came again from the papers I've written, and it came from doing it for one semester and doing it really bad. But thinking about it, and in one of the conferences, because I do present also at various conferences on gamification, and I was going through the conference, putting the paper together, putting the presentation together, and it just kind of dawned on me at that point. There's like, well, you know, we're talking about what gamification is, and then we talked about what why we want to do it, intrinsic motivation, extrinsic motivation, all that, and then we started talking about, well, now let's how we're going to do this. And I said, well, if I'm going to do this, obviously it's got to be a full online course, and I teach, and that's the other thing I didn't mention earlier. So, sorry about that, Lisa. But I teach leadership studies. It's an undergraduate minor in leadership studies that I'm teaching at adjunct teaching at the university here in Rio Grande Valley. And so I thought, well, if I'm going to do gamification, what I want to do is I want to obviously develop during the summer, because I have a little bit more time, because I don't teach during the summer. I just teach fall and spring. And if I'm going to do this, I want to develop a course that's quality matters. And it just so happened I had just about completed the courses that I had been teaching using Quality Matters. And that's just a rubric. And if you go to qualitymatters.com, if you're interested in learning more about them, you can certainly do that there. But what it means is that the courses align between the objectives and the assessments. And so I had done that. And then I thought, well, if I want to do gamification, I want to do it in this course. And at first I was kind of nervous because I thought I would mess up the course. But I said, well, I'm going to do it anyway. And then if it doesn't work, well, it's just a template, you know, we would still have the original over here. But, you know, and the more I did it and the more I looked at the Quality Matters rubric, and the more I looked at the gamification elements, the more it made sense. It just kind of aligned between each other. In other words, I said, well, I can do badges because that was the other thing. And I guess I'm not sure if you're going to ask me about the objectives in the course, but the objective was to see what, well, at this point, it was to see how I can do gamification, the pedagogy, as little technology as possible in Blackboard, and use Blackboard only, Blackboard Learn. And I said, well, I'm just going to use Blackboard Learn, no other tools. So I have been using achievements, is what they call it. It's what Blackboard calls them. You know, other people call them badges. I call them badges. So I used achievements badges tool, and then I used I've got my list over here. Sorry, onboarding. Onboarding is just like, I've got a gamification element called onboarding. I'm like, what the heck is that? So I'm reading through it, and it says, well, you know, you're just welcoming your students to your online course or to the course. And, well, I can do that. I'm already doing that. However, what I was doing is I had like part of that welcome page here in this content area and over here in this content area. And then I had the technology, what you need for the technology, what do you need for Blackboard. It was all over the place. And then so I said, well, I'm thinking that onboarding should be just one area, content area, and let's put all those elements in there. Or all those content pages into, and then call it onboarding and not welcome. So you kind of give it the gamification. So where I'm going with this is that there's a lot of things in Blackboard, a lot of tools in Blackboard that you could use for gamification that are there that you don't have to spend any more money than you have already. And that are easy to use, and you're using it. It's just a matter of renaming them. The other one that I was using was goal performance. And it's just coming back from the outcomes assessment tool or application from Blackboard, and just kind of went through that and said, well, I got to figure out how to use this. And it's really, really easy once you get it done. I put my goals over there. I hooked them, I connected them to my Blackboard course. I went to the assignments. I attached them using the goal performance. So now I know I'm being long-winded on this, but the point I'm trying to make is that leaderboard that I was mentioning earlier, you don't need it. Why? Because you have goal performance. So now students can go into a Blackboard tool called Goal Performance, click on it. Well, you can call it whatever. I mean, the professor can change the name on it. I still call it Goal Performance because I like it. But the students will click on it and it'll go into the course itself and to their goals, and they'll show all the assignments of what they've worked on for the week or the unit or the module, whatever, or the entire year. And it'll say, okay, well, you performed this, and it's got a little bar in there, green and yellow and red. So it's just another way of giving feedback. And I mean, it's a great thing for students. And feedback's another element, gaming element that, you know, I know that people have at least picked up a Game Boy or Game Xbox or something at one point. And the best thing about it is it gives you feedback. Oh, great job. You're doing great. Or, oh, you really messed up. And that's part of this goal performance thing. And I love it. I really do.
That's awesome. And I appreciate that you're thinking about the pedagogy really in line. Again, we've been talking about this before. You've mentioned this in your article, just how to engage students in their learning experience. So not just the objectives for you, but I'm also curious about, if we think about that learning experience, typically it's bounded by learning outcomes. So there's something that we want to teach our students or a particular experience that we want our students to have. So thinking about the class or classes that you've been using these tools in, what were or are your learning outcomes for this type of practice? And how were you assessing whether these outcomes were being met?
Well, one of the outcomes was I wanted to see if we could do this without or with as little technology as possible. That was a big thing. But not only that, is like trying to figure out how to do this. How are we going? I mean, what does it take to do this? And how much do I need? If I'm a professor, I am, but if I was full-time professor and I had to develop 5 or 6 of these courses in gamification, how much work is it going to take to make this happen? And obviously professors are busy teaching and grading and the only time they have off is probably in the summer if they don't teach in the summer also. But what does it take? Well, the answer to that was, you know, it takes us as little or as much as you have time for doing this, and also, I guess as much as your course itself will handle. It could be just badges. I mean, you can just add badges to it, real simple, easy. Doesn't take that much time, and it's just another way of feedback. And I kind of stress that one because I like it to a certain extent at the beginning of the course, where students, at least my students, are undergraduate, freshmen, first semester in college. They've taken a leadership class. They need a lot of feedback. So at the beginning in the onboarding, I have them take they read the syllabus, and then they take a little assessment, and then they read the how to use Blackboard, and they take a little assessment on it, and then I give them a couple of badges, and I give those real quick, real easy to get, because I want to motivate them. And when they click on the badges, hey, congratulations, you know, you're on your way to stardom and blah blah blah. So, and then I kind of wait till at the end of unit 1, at the end of the midterm and so on. I don't give them as often later as I do at the beginning, just giving them positive feedback. So I wanted to know, one is how much does it take to incorporate it into how much does it take to do this? how much work does it take for the professor? The other thing was matching the gaming elements to, and I talked about it, a little bit about it earlier, is matching that pedagogy, the gamification elements to Blackboard. And when I started off, I said, well, this is going to be really hard because Blackboard this and that and the other. And it's not true. It's just preconceived notions, or in my case, not known enough about Blackboard, not known enough about making that connection between gamification and Blackboard. But I'm over that, and I know exactly now what I want. I started out, I'm going to add it all. I'm serious. I said, I'm going to add this, and we brainstormed, and a coworker and I were like, had a whole board of, well, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to give points. This is what we're going to give levels and certificates. And it turned out that points, levels, and certificates is something that I want to do a year later, and I was thinking I could have done it last year within a week. No, it doesn't happen like that. And then we had the idea of storyboarding and some kind of story behind it. And especially in leadership, where you can go from, entry level to CEO. So I want to write some kind of story behind all that of a person. And so that's Lisa, that's what I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Though I'm curious about, just informally, you had mentioned near the beginning of our interview that at times there were students who weren't very excited about or didn't seem as engaged with some of the different tools or pedagogies or technologies, strategies you were using. Have you gotten any feedback from your students now, anecdotally or otherwise, who have been using the badges? What do they think about it? How are they responding to it? How is it changing their learning experience?
Well, like I said, I had taught this class at least 2 semesters before it was even quality matter standards and gamified. So I don't have a baseline really but I guess just looking at the interaction in the first couple of classes, and it wasn't as good as I was hoping. And that was the whole thinking behind, I want to do something more. I want to do something, I'm presenting, I was already presenting on gamification and reading up on it and writing. And so, well, I really want to know not only how to do this, but I want to see what the students will think about it. And I don't have a definite, but I have had a couple of students reach out to me and say, well, this is a really nice class, and I know exactly where I'm at, and I really like your feedback. So, I've gotten some comments like that, and I have noticed that the interaction is definitely there. All my students will go through the assignments and complete them, with the exception of 1 or 2, which, I'm not, I don't want to say what other online courses are like, but because I don't know what other professors and so I think the best thing to do is, I've gotten some positive feedback. It's not research-based, and I really don't, at this point, ready for doing the research-based, comparing one course to another, because it's really not, I don't like that. I rather just look at the course in itself and see the interaction, what the students thought, and so on. And then maybe the year after we'll do some kind of research on it. I think the other thing that's holding me back on that one is that this course is really under development. I've added badges, I've added onboarding, signposts, and just some other small elements that gamification elements, but it's not where I want to be. I want to add the points and the levels, and I want to add certificates, and I want stories. So at what point, even if I ran a survey right now and did the whole comparing thing, it's going to be different in the summer. It definitely is, because I've got it all lined up, and I know exactly what I'm going to add. So it's a moving target. There you go. That's what it is, Lisa. It's a moving target.
I think you've just spoken to not just gamification, but leadership development in general. I think that's a lovely way of just summarizing what we do and how we do it in some cases. Absolutely.
Correct.
So go ahead.
I'm sorry, Lisa. But yeah,
No,
every time I'm talking, and I guess I'm so used to thinking of my course as leadership studies, and I keep thinking, oh yeah, that's exactly right. I want to add to this whole leadership. I mean, again, these are incoming freshmen, undergraduate, they're 18, 19 years old. Best time to hit them with some leadership studies.
that's right. Start them right away. Absolutely. Yeah. So you've alluded to this already, but maybe just if there's anything else that comes to mind, or maybe not even in the pedagogy, but also just in different areas to explore around gamification. Where do you see future research and/or writing headed in this area? So you've talked about some areas that you might want to be adding to your course, or other things, strategies that you may want to include in future courses. What will you be writing about, researching, or perhaps gamifying next?
Well, definitely more about gamification and how to, write that story, that great story that, and I know that's a whole different science too behind that one. I got a couple of books on story writing, and I want to give a stab at it, and it's definitely going to be about leadership studies, and I do want to do some research in the area of history and leadership, because it really interests me how we got to this political division in this country that we have. And I started thinking, and this is just recently, I mean, this is since a couple of days ago, I'm thinking, man, this whole thing is just nuts. This whole political thing is nuts. How do we get here? And then I started thinking, well, there's definitely history behind that. It just didn't happen overnight. And I'm really curious and interested in the history part behind the political thing that's going on. And so I want to tie that obviously to leadership. So what key leadership theories can we attach to history and politics, and how do we get here? And bringing it into the course would definitely help some of these students. They're 18, and I've talked to, they're in their teens, and we have a couple that work here, and they're not in the, I guess they're in their teens. There's UTRGV students, but also in my family, and talking to them, and they have this, or they don't have this whole grasp on leadership and politics, and I want to bring that into the course, and through story and through part of this gaming elements, and I don't know. Well, it's still work in progress. Yeah.
Right up there with moving target. Work in progress is another great phrase to talk about what we do and why we do it and how we do it. Absolutely. And I appreciate I think overall this idea of gamification really speaks to engagement, student engagement, but you've mentioned a couple of times, I think one thing that's going to resonate in this interview and also in the article that you've written is this notion of gamification for feedback. Feedback for you to give to the students, but also feedback that your students are giving to you, whether that's formative assessments or just anecdotally. I think those pieces are going to be really key in thinking about gamification, technology, but even just thinking about the practices and the pedagogies we use in leadership development. So before we wrap up our interview, is there anything else that you wanted to add or share about the work that you're doing, about the article you've written, or anything else that you'd like to share with our colleagues working in leadership development?
I think maybe I want to clear up some couple of things here. One is I started learning about gamification, and it was kind of assigned to this area, to my area. It's like, well, once you do some innovation and look at different topics that you want to explore and do some research on it. And we started doing that about a couple of years ago, 3 years ago. And gamification was interesting. I'm not a gamer. It's my age. I'm a little after. I came before the game. But I did play games without technology. So yes, I've played a lot of games. I guess going to talking to faculty that say, well, I'm not a game leader, so I'm not even going to look at that, because I did get that a lot, and I was one of them. But it's more than that. It's turned to more than just playing games. It's turned into, how can I teach better? What tools can I use to teach better? And then here comes this, well, I'm teaching leadership because it is my PhD and I really enjoy doing this, but then I'm doing this research in gamification, not tied to the leadership, but I was trying to tie it somehow because it's always good to tie a couple of things together. And it's like, oh, I can tie this. And it took me at least a year to say, oh yeah, I can do this, what we've just been talking about. It was just not even an idea. I mean, I was doing the research for gamification, and I was teaching, not doing teaching, but teaching in leadership, and like, oh, I can. So faculty can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're raising such a good point around things that we find to be interesting or things that we get passionate about. And they're often on these fun parallel tracks, and we don't consider often that they can intersect and they can go together, that we've got this lovely space and opportunity in our classrooms, whether they're virtual or in person or a combination of both, to experiment and to play and to try. And I think gamification is such a lovely example of that. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome, Lisa.
Well, thank you, Ramiro, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Pause for Pedagogy is an initiative of the Leadership Education Member Interest Group of the International Leadership Association. All of our articles and videos are available through the Interphase newsletter, which is available at www.ila-net.org. And you can also follow us on Twitter at @the_ILA. Thanks so much, and thanks again, Ramiro. Have a great day.
Okay, bye, Lisa.